Here we go, section 2.4, day 2, complex zeros, which means if I had like quadratic formula negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, I might get stuff like this, negative, let's just make that an 8, plus or minus the square root of 3 all over 2, something like that. Or I could even have an I in there. These are considered complex zeros. So, and the fundamental theorem of algebra, we'll talk about that in a minute. All this says is find all. That means rational and irrational zeros. Okay, well, how do we get started? Well, first of all, this is not a trinomial, so we can't factor it like a trinomial. What we're going to have to do is use our good friend plus or minus p over q, and that's our p, so it's plus or minus 1, plus or minus 3. And the good news here, if that's a 1, then if I put this all over 1, it doesn't change anything. There's my list of possible rational roots, and that's how I'm going to get started. By the way, I know this is a 3, so I'm not done until I find 3 roots. Now I might find 1 rational, 2 complex, 2 rational, 1 complex. I mean, you're not sure. So we start by figuring out, all right, let's see if 1 works. Plug it in. 1 cubed plus 2 times 1 plus 4. I think that's a plus. Yep, plus 3. As you can see, it's all positive, so that's not going to give us a 0. Let's try negative 1. Negative 1 cubed is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is 1 times 2 is 2. Negative 1 times 4 is negative 4. And then plus 3. And look at that. Negative 5 and positive 5. That gives us our 0. There's one of our zeros. What do we do once we get a 0? Well, this is where the chipmunk nest / synthetic division comes into play. Then we put our coefficient, 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 coefficient from up here. And then we just follow through with the program. Drop the 1, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add. Now notice there's no remainder, which means this turns into, remember the rule? If this is a 3, this turns into 1x squared plus 1x plus 3. Now I need to find 2 more zeros. Where's that going to come from? From this trinomial. So I'm going to turn that into a trinomial. Now if this is factorable, your life just got super, super, super easy. But are there 2 factors of 3 that add up to 1? No, doesn't work. That's why we need the good old quadratic formula. I told you we'd get to that eventually, and now's the time. So from the quadratic formula, I look at this. This is my A. This is my B. That's my C. And I'm going to plug it in up here. So negative B just simply means take the opposite of B. So I have B is 1, so I get negative 1 plus or minus the square root of B squared, which is 1, minus 4 times A times C all over 2a, which would be just 2. So I get negative 1 plus or minus the square root of, this is 1 minus 12, which is negative 11, all over 2. So I get negative 1 plus or minus I squared of 11 all over 2. Now, this is 2 answers, and this is 1 answer. So I've got all 3 of them, and I found all the zeros, okay? Now this one's a little bit different because we have a 4, which means we are not done until we have 4 answers. I like to give myself this little clue telling myself, hey, you're not done until you find 4. So I start out with plus or minus p all over q. 12. That means there's a lot of possibilities to get started. But remember, all you need to do is find one of them to get started. And you start with a 1, and you just say a little prayer, and hopefully that works out. 1 to the 4th is 1. 1 cubed is 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. 1 squared is 1. 1 times negative 8 is negative 8 minus 12. It was looking good, but there's no way that equals 0. Negative 1. Negative 1 to the fourth is 1. Negative 1 cubed is negative 1 times negative 2 is positive 2. Negative 1 squared is 1. Negative 1 times negative 8 is 8. And then minus 12. And look at that. This is positive 12, minus 12. We got ourselves a 0. Now listen carefully. This is a little different than this one, because we have 3 answers over here. We have 4 answers up here. Watch. So we get negative 1 for one of our answers. What do we do as soon as we find one? We put it in what I refer to as the chipmunk nest. And now we take our coefficients. 1, negative 2, 1, negative 8, negative 12. Drop the 1, multiply, add. Multiply, add. Negative 12. This is a 12. That's a 0. This is a good sign, because if negative 1 is one of our solutions, there should not be a remainder when we're done with all of this. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. But now look. Remember our highest power was 4. So now we're going to drop down to 3, then 2, then 1, then none equals 0. This is where I'm going to find my remaining 3 answers, because now we have a 3. Now, is this a trinomial? No, so it's not factorable. Well, what do I do? Well, I've only went to 1 and negative 1 before I found one, so now I just got to keep going. So now I'm going to try, and I hope 2 works in this. So 2 cubed is 8. 2 squared is 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. 4 times 2 is 8. And then minus 12. Doesn't look like that works. Too many negatives. Let's try negative 2. Negative 2 cubed is negative 8. Negative 2 squared is 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8 minus 12. Those are all negatives. Obviously, it's not going to work. Let's try 3. 3 cubed is 27. 3 squared is 9 times negative 3 is negative 27. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? This is looking good. Plus 4 times 3 is 12. Minus 12. Look at that. So our second one is a 3. What do I do with that? Well, put it in the chipmunk nest, but then we're going to use the coefficients of this one. So 1, negative 3, 4, negative 12. Drop the 1, multiply, add. 3 times 0 is 0, add. 4 times 3 is 12, add. Now this is unique. But remember, if this was a 3, remember this one dropped from a 4 to a 3. Now we're going to go from a 3 to a 2. So I'm going to rewrite this. X squared plus 0x plus 4 equals 0. That's what this really tells you. Now, is this a trinomial? Not really, because this is just nothing. So I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides, and I'm going to get x squared equals negative 4. Now, if you didn't have me for Algebra 2, this isn't going to make total sense to you, but I'm going to go up here and teach you something. X squared equals 49. If I asked you what the answers were, I think you'd say 7. Problem is, doesn't negative 7 also work? So that's why I teach my students bada boom, bada bing, do the right thing. So it's a little jingle that helps students remember there's a plus and a minus. So bada boom, bada bing, do the right thing. So this is plus or minus 2i. So one of them would be 2i, the other one would be negative 2i. And there's our 4 solutions. All right, last 2. This is kind of an interesting problem. It says write the function as a product of linear irreducible quadratic factors. That gets a big old wow, because that seems fancy. Bottom line is this. You're going to find the answers, and then you're going to rewrite it. Okay, with that in mind, plus or minus p all over q. I'm going to start with plus or minus 1 and plus or minus 2. And because that's a 3, I go plus or minus 1, plus or minus 3. Now, if I list them all out, and I look at this, I'm going to get plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2. But if I go this way, I get plus or minus 1/3, If I go this way, I get plus or minus 2/3. I hope I don't go deep into these fractions, so I hope one of these works. So I'm going to try f of 1. That'd be 1 cubed times 3 is 3. 1 squared is 1 times -2 is -2. Plus 1 minus 2. Look at that. Doesn't happen all the time, but 3 plus 1 is 4. Minus 4 gives me my 0. I found one of my answers. It's 1. Remember, there's going to be 3 because my highest power is a 3. Put that in the nest. Take your coefficients. Synthetic division. Drop the first thing down. Multiply, add. Multiply, add. Multiply, add. What does this give me? 3x squared plus x plus 2 equals 0. Now, I try to encourage my students to try to factor it. Just always try. But this isn't going to work. I mean, no matter what you try, you can put a 2 there, a 1 there, you can reverse these. It's not going to work. So here's my A, here's my B, here's my C. This is a 1. So quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2. Uh-oh. All right, I just caught myself. I always do this every time I teach this. This is saying write the function as a product of linear irreducible factors. So, see, this thing is not factorable. So instead, they're not asking us to find the zeros. That's what I was trying to do. But you see, this is one of my answers. So this is asking me to go f of x equals, if that's one of my answers, then I'm going to write it as x minus 1. And because this is not factorable, 3x squared plus x plus 2. And I am done. See, I was making a mistake by trying to solve it. That's not what this is asking. It's saying solve it so that you can write it as a product of irreducible factors. So we're not even trying to solve it. In a weird way, we're factoring these unfactorable, weird equations. All right. Hopefully I didn't lose you too much. I got 2.5 minutes, so watch this. So, plus or minus p over q, 14, 1, 2, plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, 7, 14. Good news, it's all over 1, so I can get to work. Let's try to find 1. 1 to the 4th is 1. 1 cubed 1 times 3 is 3. That's a 7. That's a 3. And boy, they gave us a good one to start. So this equals 0. Thank goodness. So here's one of my answers. Now, here's the deal. It says irreducible. So I don't know what's going on. I'm going to put it in the chipmunk nest. Go 1, 3, 7, 3, negative 14. Wah. Drop the 1, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, and I get a 0. What does this turn into? X cubed plus 4x squared plus 11x plus 14 equals 0. Now I got to continue on the journey, so I'm going to try negative 1. Negative 1 cubed is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is 1 times 4 is 4. Negative 1 times 11 is negative 11, and then 14. 18 minus 12, so close. So I got to go to 2. 2 cubed is 8. 2 squared is 4 times 4 is 16. 2 times 11 is 22, plus 14. You can see there's too many positives. I got a good feeling about this next one, though. Maybe not. Negative 2 cubed is negative 8. Negative 2 squared is 4 times 4 is 16. That'd be negative 22 plus 14. Look at that. 30 and negative 30 gives me my 0. So that's another one of my zeros. This is one of my zeros. Now what am I going to do with that? Put it in the chipmunk nest. Take the coefficients. 1, 4, 11, 14. Almost done. Got 30 seconds. 1, negative 2, 2. Negative 4, 7, negative 14, boom. So I get x squared plus 2x plus 7. This is not factorable, so my answer is going to be this, plus my 0, x plus 2, and then my other 0, x minus 1, and that's what f of x is. Got it. And I've answered the problem.